Within weeks of the start of hostilities in Palestine, the Arab world's Jews, with varying degrees of intensity, began to feel that the ground was burning under their feet. There was an atmosphere of governmental anti-Semitism and popular intimidation, with the mob often given its head. By January 49, Arab politicians were linking the fate of Palestinian refugees to that of the local Jewish communities. Though the Palestinians had fought Israel and the Arab Jewish communities had been almost completely quiescent, not to say loyal, to their states. Prime Minister Nuri Said of Iraq threatened, this is a quote, that all Iraqi Jews would be expelled if the Israelis did not allow the Arab refugees to return to Palestine. At the same time, Israel's broadcasting stations and officials began to purvey the Zionist message to the Arab world's Jewish communities in an effort to draw them to immigrate to the newborn state. The first to leave were Yemen's Jews, a community that had long had a religious Zionist tradition. Thousands had trickled to Palestine during the previous 70 years. During May 49, August 1950, in Operation Magic Carpet, organized by Israel and the Zionist movement abroad, almost all of the country's 45,000 Jews trekked to Aden and were flown out to Israel. Next to go were Iraq's relatively large, educated and prosperous community. Iraq had made departure illegal, but several thousand Jews fled Iraq across the border into Iran during 48-49. Between May 50 and August 1951, the Israeli authorities airlifted the remaining 80 to 90,000 Jews of Iraq to Israel, though they left behind almost all their possessions and citizenship. Almost all of Syria's 15,000 Jews left the country illegally in the course of 1948, following the December 47 pogrom in Aleppo. Palestinian refugees were installed in the deportees' homes. Egypt's 65,000 Jews mostly held European citizenships. Very few were actually Egyptian citizens in 1947. Some 25,000 left in 48-50. The bulk of the rest of Egypt's Jews left under duress during 1955-1957, around the Sinai-Suez War. By 1970, only about 1,000 remained, though these too left during the following years. Most of Libya's 40,000 Jews left during 1949-1951, frightened into departure by their Muslim neighbors. Maghrebi Jewry, the inhabitants of Morocco, Tunisia and Algeria, were the last to leave due to the continuing French administration of these countries. There were more than 300,000 Jews in the Maghreb at the time, in the early 1950s. The approaching end of French rule and the pogrom at Mazagan near Casablanca resulted in the first large wave of Jewish emigration from Morocco in 1955-56, when some 60,000 left. The bulk of the rest, some 250,000, left in the years immediately after the death in 1961 of the new state's ruler, Sultan Muhammed V, who had traditionally been protective of the Jews, most settled in Israel. Today there are some 4,000 Jews, 4,000, left in Morocco, the largest community in the Arab world. In Yemen, Syria and Egypt, several dozen remain. In Libya and Iraq, there are a mere handful. Without doubt, the onset of Zionism, and especially the War of 1948, in which Israel emerged and many Palestinians were displaced from their homes, was the immediate trigger to the dissolution and emigration of the Arab world's large Jewish communities. But centuries of Muslim hostility, persecution and humiliation vis-à-vis the Arab world's Jewish communities had both conditioned the majority Arab population to treat the Jews with disdain and even violence, and conditioned these Jewish communities to depart when the opportunity arose, soon after they began to feel the pressure of state-endorsed intimidation in 1948 and immediately after. Without doubt as well, the rise of the Jewish state and operative Zionist propaganda acted as a pull mechanism, like a large magnet, for those Jewish communities, some of them 2,000 years old and more. The end result was the disappearance of the Arab world's Jewish communities and their resettlement mainly in Israel. and an abiding resentment and even hatred of the Arabs by the emigres and their descendants, which largely explains the generally right-wing voting patterns of Israel's Sephardi population. The arrival in Israel within a short span of time of these hundreds of thousands of impoverished and largely illiterate Jews created an internal ethnic problem. But Israel ultimately absorbed these refugees, as it had the post-Holocaust waves of Jewish refugees from Europe, giving them new homes, schools, and jobs, and today the ethnic problem is largely a fading memory. There is no Jewish refugee problem. By contrast, the Arab world, Syria, Lebanon, Egypt, when it ruled the Gaza Strip, and to an extent Jordan, failed to absorb the Palestinian refugees, leaving an explosive problem at the core of the Israeli-Palestinian relations, which is why there is still a Palestinian refugee problem.